Ladies and gentlemen, we are live once again, and it's a happy Wednesday, May 27th, 2026. And I hope everybody's having a kind of a nice hump day. Weather's kind of nice here. It's a little bit of a cool breeze, but nothing's too much for you guys. We were supposed to have a guest come on, and I never got the confirmation, so we postponed Dr. Paula Swift until a future date can be arrived at. And what else is going on? Today I want to do something uh, that follows on what we've been talking about lately, and that's credibility. Excuse me. But what I want to do is relate that to a New York Times editorial today, a Tom Friedman editorial. And I assume if anybody that's a regular reader of the Times knows who Friedman is. And I don't really know if he's a great writer or not, but I know he puts a lot of time and thought into his editorials. And today, with in light of the Iran situation, which is worldwide news, is exactly this is a quote. I'll rephrase it later. But how much crow will Trump have to eat? And the implication is how much crow or poopy doo will Trump have to eat to get out of Iran, to get out of the Strait of Hormuz? Okay. Uh, so yeah, Iran's gonna, they're not gonna, if they haven't rolled over yet, they ain't gonna roll over. And they're used to playing hardball. They have absolutely nothing to lose. Uh, so their backs are up against the wall and they know it and they're ready for us. But anyway, so it goes on to, and about the quantity of crow. We know that he's going to have to eat a boatload of crow or poopy doo to get this. But what we don't know is whether he's going to spin this as not necessarily eating poopy doo, but oh, look at this deal. This is a steak, lobster and steak deal, or whatever they say. Oh, lobster filet mignon. Sorry, I didn't. I'm vegetarian. I forgot which kind of meat was which. So anyway, how much crow is he going to have to eat? Is he going to relinquish the Strait of Hormuz to Iran? Not as such, but it's still, it still ain't, it's not going to be open, and we're going to feel these disruptions for a long time. And this is one of those times where Trump he ain't be able to run and hide. He may try not to address things, he'll distort things, but anyway. So the question is, will Trump paint the deal as him getting lobster and filet mignon, or is it just straight poopy doo? We both know it's straight poopy doo. What Donald Trump calls it is an entirely different question, which relates to the original credibility problem. And credibility means worthy of being believed. So, with that in mind, you'd have to think that not a whole lot of Trump's stuff is credible or worthy of being believed. But anyway, let's get back to the crow problem. It's okay to eat some crow if Iran gives up, a fairly big deal. Like, what if they gave up their 1,000 pounds of near weapons grade uranium? I need a little crow for that, and I'm fairly sure Trump would, but God only knows for that guy. Um, and what that does is, let's say they gave up their 1,000 pounds of near weapons grade uranium. What does that do? Well, that takes the immediate threat of Iran off the table, of an Iranian nuclear bomb in the short term off the table. And, President Obama's original deal with Iran was a very good one. And it was the only person that didn't like it was Donald Trump. That's because he was too stupid to negotiate such a thing himself. And we'll get back into that, how that's a fatal flaw in just a second. So anyway, we need a little crow for that, wouldn't we? Okay. And let's say Trump says, I have a perfect and delicious deal. We already know there's going to be some compromises and some crow eating. Uh, so yeah, what do how much you want to give up or how much you want to eat, Don? And, And you got to remember that in this background, that don't forget they're still holding what 10 tons of low grade uranium, but it takes the immediate threat off the table. And sometimes you can't always get the deal you want. Sometimes you have to get that which is achievable. And I don't think Trump has that sort of mental capability to distinguish those two. But we both know that you got to give up something to get something, and I think that's just one of those truisms in life. But anyway, even before we started to bomb, you had the Iranian citizens lining up in protest. What was it? 5,000 were killed, or was it more? It was a really high number of peaceful protesters that the Iranian state murdered. Just 5,000 people just murdered. And why were they murdered? Because they were speaking up against the monarchy, and the Ayatollah, I guess would be a better word. Excuse me. So what are we gonna do now? We had the Iranians kind of on the ropes, and we had people rising up in protest over there, and Trump says something like, "Oh, come on, help's on the way." Well, I don't really think we've done anything to help the Iranian people. Matter of fact, we've clearly made things worse for their people. There's going to be no regime change, so scratch that, Don. I mean, what do you really want? You want no nukes? Well, we'll give you no nukes for a couple of years. Well, that's not good enough. Well, that's all you're going to get. You can. And the Iranian negotiators have been at this for decades. They're really good, and the odds of Trump outsmarting those guys are slim and none, and slim's out of town. And I'd like to kind of take a little break for a second here, and the reason is I usually talk about Ada Briseno at the beginning of every program, and I was so excited about the Friedman editorial that I let it slip for a minute. But anyway, Ada Briseno is a candidate for state assembly from District 68. And what's important to know about Ada is why she should be elected. Why does she deserve your vote? Why does she deserve anybody's vote? And I'm happy to tell you. Ada Briseno is an American success story. I don't know how you get around this. She came as a child with her parents, refugees from Nicaragua. She finds a job at a hotel, organizes the workers, forms the union, later becomes president of the union. At some point, she's chair of the Democratic Party of Orange County. And if that's not an American success story, I don't know what is. And if Republicans out there think that this is something, what can I say? Something too endearing, we don't have to worry, because those guys could put up $8 and $10 million to smear Ada. And with that in mind, let me play this little clip for you. Hold on.
Why are pro-Trump billionaires spending a fortune lying about Ada Briseno? Because they're afraid of her. Bernie Sanders calls Ada a warrior who stood up to corporate interests and delivered real change for working men and women. Planned Parenthood says Ada is a champion for reproductive freedom. Healthcare workers called her fearless. Join Bernie Sanders. Vote Ada Briseno for Assembly, the one candidate who strikes fear into the heart of Trump's allies.
And they have set aside, it was like $4 million or more to defeat Ada Briseno in Assembly District 68 in California. If that doesn't give you an idea of how scared they are of Ada, anyway, I'm sure you get the point. But there's a bigger point in this. If anyone else would have gone through that sort of evolutionary development from a child refugee to union president and state assembly member, it astounds me that that's not universally considered the American dream or a success story. But she's a success story as far as you and I are concerned. And let's vote. District 68, Ada Briseno. You could try to find a more dedicated assembly member, you might try to find, someone that cares more, this, that, and the other. But truth of the matter is, I kind of doubt that. I doubt you'll find anybody more caring or more in tune to to the social, not really injustices, but or maybe it is injustices, or maybe it's just unfairness. Yeah, how about that? Ada is aware of the social, awareness, or has a lot of social awareness, and that's why she's such a community oriented person. Anyway, I'll get off my Ada Briseno soapbox now. But vote Ada Briseno, District 68. The primary is June the 2nd. And like I say, it would be nice to teach these Trump guys a lesson. Not only let's help Ada win, but let's help Ada win big in a landslide. Let's show them what an incredible waste of time and money their $4 or $8 million was, because you could spend a gajillion dollars, but Ada's just she's virtuous. She genuinely cares. So I don't. Anyway, I don't know how anybody holds out against her. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, or meanwhile back in Tom Friedman land. Now, so getting back to Iran, you had the riots and the people, and the regime actually looked in a little danger. They had been talking to Pahlavi. I think before the Iranian Revolution, they were led by a oh God, what do you call it? I don't. I forget my supreme leader, but I don't know what the proper name is. So anyway, you've got the regime hanging on. You've got people rioting in the streets. You've got Donald Trump saying help is on the way. And now what happens? Now, because Trump blew everything, now that Trump blew everything, the regime is in a stronger position. I mean, Trump and Vance and Rubio is going to be known as the team that gave the Iranian regime, new life, right? They were headed down, and what do? We saved them. How about that, Don? Another instance of making matters worse. But I'll get into how exactly you made matters worse in a few minutes. Now, you know what Iran wants in the deal. What we want. We want no nukes, and we want the Strait of Hormuz open, and whatever other weasel things Trump can get out of them. So what does Iran want? Iran wants to lift our blockade on their oil exports, and they want the U.S. to drop these crippling economic sanctions. So what are they willing to give up to get that? Well, I think, and let's look at both sides. Who has the better side of the argument? Who's in the driver's seat? Is Iran in the driver's seat, or is the U.S. in the driver's seat? I think it's been pretty well discussed that the U.S. is in the short seat, and the Iranians want to go for the long game. They understand the long game. They understand the short game too. The problem is Trump doesn't understand the long game. He's just incapable, and as we go on with this, you'll see why. And see, because the Trump security team did absolutely no scenario planning before the war, they were convinced that Netanyahu's description of a quick and easy victory was true. So they didn't, so you got Netanyahu saying, it's okay, Don, they're going to fall quickly. Well, what's the next obvious question? That's right. What if they don't? And guess what? That question is never asked. Okay. And Trump knows that he didn't ask the question. Why? Because he assumes he knows everything. And, whatever it is fine, because he knows everything. And I think as tragic as his economic policies are going to be for the country, these sorts of military ones are just unforgivable. They really are. I mean, to not wonder, well, what if? plan B, so on and so forth. And it was like Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixture, used to say, he's just incapable of thinking of anything other than right in the moment. And if you think right in the moment, you're going to be a lousy planner. And if you think in the moment and are unable to ask for help, leading a nation of 340 million people, then everybody's in trouble. And Don, the fact of the matter is that the gig is up and the jig is up, or however the saying goes. You've been exposed. You might think you're the most virtuous person on earth, but there's lots of evidence to the contrary. And like I said, Trump says he's an honorable guy. Well, let's weigh the credibility of the person making the statement. Let's see. If a person makes a statement about themselves, then we can assume they're wanting to share some knowledge with us. They may want us to know how rich they are, how big their boat is, all that stuff. But I say, regardless of the deal or the situation, Trump never asks what if. So the military guys don't worry about it. I'm sure they did their due diligence in the matter, but I'm equally sure that nobody wants to be the guy that brings bad news to Trump. And I can't imagine how bad this is going to be for him or for us. I wish he could negotiate with Trump without the implication of negotiating on behalf of the citizens. But that's another problem for another day. But the status quo now is that I think Iran pretty well knows that they can shut off the world's most valuable oil pipeline in seconds. They can. It's just, what do you say? They can shut off the world's biggest oil tap. I think that gives them an edge. Matter of fact, I'm kind of hard pressed to see an American edge. And like I said, Trump failed to anticipate the Hormuz shutdown. Why? Why did he not anticipate the Hormuz shutdown? Why didn't he ask anybody about the possibility? Well, he didn't ask anybody because he assumed he knows everything, when he may not get it at all. And everybody else is stuck by that uninformed decision made by that orange-tinted subhuman being in the White House these days. At least not, and yes, like the dog said when his tail got run over by the train. It won't be long now. We had that had Paxton win the Texas primary, so he will be running against a choir boy, James Tallarico. And Cornyn, let's say he may have even more legal problems than Trump. If he died, and it's awfully close. And there was just never any chance Trump was going to endorse John Cornyn, even though he was a faithful Republican senator from Texas. It wasn't enough. He wanted his guy. Now that should make the point that in the primary they elected someone for the general that has no prayer in hell of beating a Democrat because he's such a radical right guy. So let's just kind of hang on to that and see where that goes. But anyway, so you got the Strait of Hormuz closed, and you're like, well, didn't anybody think of this? And don't make no mistake about it. The responsibility is the president's. I can't imagine who he's going to blame this on. I'd love to see it. But the fact of the matter is, he made he made all the important decisions here. He chose to believe Netanyahu. And you would think that those two would know to not trust each other. So you just have to, sometimes you just have to let human nature take its course. So, like I say, he failed to. Can you imagine that? And if they failed to anticipate, the Strait of Hormuz, they clearly failed to anticipate, or they were clearly wrong in anticipating a quick fall and quick victory. But when you want someone to buy your story, you sell them whatever they want to hear. And quick strike, victory, in and out. That's Donald Trump's reason for living, right? The quick hit they're not planning for because he can't. So so think about this. He thinks he knows everything, so he doesn't ask questions. Now I'm a little unsure how you learn without asking questions. And I'd hate to be a real jerk about that, but I really don't understand. I always thought that a rational based decision kind of required balancing of interests or balancing of viewpoints or reconciliation of them. And I say, make no mistake about it. Whatever Trump's doing, it is not leading. Trust me, he's not leading. He's not even following well. He just, he just sucks. Okay, so anyway, Tehran can shut it down, failed to anticipate. So anyway, so not only did they fail to anticipate that Iran would fight back, but they failed to anticipate what would happen if Iran was a little more aggressive. Well, we know that answer, don't we? See, we used to bomb Iran. Trump thought, and I talk about the man that thought, right? Thought he had to fart and poop in his pants. Was Trump and not Netanyahu just kind of assumed that their giant multi-billion-dollar weapon systems could be used to bomb Iran into relinquishing its ingredients for weapons of mass destruction. And and accidentally they enabled an analogous weapon of mass destruction. And guess what that is? That is to close the Strait of Hormuz. Isn't that better than a nuclear weapon? I mean, it's got an immediate hit, and there's no radiation or anything. So the Iranians know they can shut this thing down at any minute. So they're not, they're in the driver's seat. And while this had never happened before, the strait had always been open. Excuse me, guys. I did say it's a little chilly out here. The breeze a little cool, but anyway, I'm surviving. So so think about that. How good of a weapon is closing the Strait of Hormuz? God knows it's cheap. You get a few powerboats and some drones, and next thing you know, the tanker and freighter insurance rates go through the roof. And if a freighter doesn't have an insurance, it's not allowed to dock in port, at least not in the States. So that's there's, because Trump is such a selective thinker, he misses the big picture every time. And again, I fail to see how that's consistent with any degree of intelligence. But who was it called Trump, the AI president, the other day? Well, I call him the AI president too, but in my case, AI stands for absent intelligence. I always thought that was kind of clever. So anyway, you get, Trump is in charge, and the mullahs, the ayatollahs that were oppressing the people in Iran before are still there, and they're probably a little stronger. He's got bupkis out of the Iranians with the Strait of Hormuz. Matter of fact, every time Trump says negotiations are near, he's just lying. The only people that take that seriously, and they may not even take it all that seriously, they've probably seen through this. But what about people, shooting arrows or something into eyeballs? Isn't that pretty painful? Do you really want to see Trump keeping on doing that? And there's only one thing I'd kind of like to see him keep on doing, and that's kicking balls on the golf course. Let's cement that reputation. What would it be? Here lies who's the greatest striker of all time, and paint him like that. I'm sorry, the not the futility, but the lack of organization and planning is just killing me. And it's obvious to everybody in the country. And Trump is not hearing a word of it. I am sure that after every speech, there's nothing except, geez, boss, you hit that one out of the park. Good shot. Should have gotten a reward. That's all he hears. So he's clearly made his own world and has reinforced it with his own soundtrack, which, kind of makes me think he shouldn't be allowed to say or say anything good, but that's neither here nor there. Okay. So then what if Hegseth or someone or Trump would have asked Hegseth or Kegseth, what if Iran does like Ukraine and tosses a few $30,000 drones into the strait and close it down? Well, then what? Well, guess what? Trump never asked. And because Trump never asked, Iran now has a nuclear equivalent, a stranglehold over the global economy with a closed Strait of Hormuz. I'll repeat that again. Iran now has the equivalent of a nuclear bomb, being able to shut off the world's largest oil tap anytime they want. No warning, just shut it down. And at that point, we go through this disruption in the supply chain all over again. And it's always worse if it doesn't get fixed right away. It usually gets worse over time. And I think we can say that about Trump. Whatever it is, he clearly got worse over time. Okay. So they didn't ask, and they didn't, they really didn't care. So, and again, what if Trump asked Kegseth? What if Iran responds to attacking our allies? What happens if they go after the Emirates or God knows who else? And what about not only going after not them as a country, but how about going directly at their infrastructure? Think about that, the infrastructure of our Gulf allies. It wouldn't take much to destabilize those guys. I don't think anybody's as happy as they would like to be. And let's say Iran. And Iran also knocked out 17% of Qatar's export capacity. Okay, 17%. That's a pretty good bit, right? We're closing in on 20%. But the big deal is this: that represents $20 billion in lost revenue, and so it depletes the supply of 12.8 million barrels a year for between 3 and 5 years, as long as it takes to rebuild the refinery facilities that Iran attacked after America attacked them. So Iran clearly didn't have any problem striking a third party. And the U.S. clearly had a problem thinking about we just have an administration that is so anti-science and anti-fact that people automatically ask you what kind of a lousy private school you went to. And then there's good ones and bad ones. There's private schools that preach the gospel, and churches that don't. And I'm going to suggest that the stricter the church, the stricter the congregant. So let's see, the radicalization is just all. I mean, you don't have to go anywhere; it comes to you. It's just right there on the internet. I do think these guys ought to be told about what happens with illegal searches, but you can't. Sometimes you just can't talk to people about stuff like that. So anyway, let's kind of get back to where we were here. Okay. Oh, so 20% oil, 12.8 million barrels for 3 to 5 years. That kind of strikes me as being a lot, And Friedman concludes with these few points. And he says there's something else Iran can see. What is that? Thought you'd never ask. Iran sees that Trump is not mentally stable and can't be counted on. And the truth of the matter is, not only does Iran see Trump like that, but the rest of the world sees Trump like that. The only place he gets positive press is in the U.S. And if you guys were tuned to any given foreign news network, you would see that Trump is just a laughing stock all over, and he has been a laughing stock. Everything he said is distorted. You know, what do you think he could do? Take the band off for a year? I mean, this is just huge, and to have people at that level of incompetence are just shocking, especially to other world leaders. But think about that. Everybody knows the president's nuts, except us. Oh, and we don't admit to it. And that's just a mistake of historic proportions. If there was ever a guy that needed to be, that needed to suffer the same fate as the president went under 26th Amendment, I think we're kind of here. But let me finish up with Friedman for a second. On some part of the deal, Trump is talking to his Middle Eastern allies like the Emirates and the Saudis, and he says something like, "Oh, as part of the deal, let's get them to sign on to the Abraham Accords." Now, I had heard this was such a ridiculous thing, and it caught the other diplomats so off guard. They didn't know what to say. They're just like, "Huh? What'd you say?" So, the delusional presidency continues. But the question comes in this about those Abraham Accords that he wants everyone to sign on to. And the question is, according to Tom Friedman, on what planet would Iran require, would the Iran regime just up and go make peace? I mean, they were pretty much founded on the destruction of Israel, Hezbollah, Party of God, all that stuff. And Friedman concludes that this is just ridiculous. It's juvenile, and it's unvetted by enough experts. And ultimately, Israel and Arab allies are wondering, well, what are we unstable? Are we going to be there? And that's Trump's handiwork coming home to roost. So, guys, I hope you kind of appreciated the Friedman editorial. He's written, everything he writes is usually fairly outstanding, and this is no different. But yeah, and it's a column. It's not a bug, so you get a little extra insight into it. But what I'm curious to know is, what do you guys think of this? Give us a call, 949-629-3820. And, what do you think? Do you think Trump's insane? Do you think we're being laughed at in the foreign press? Do you think that foreigners are going to start selling our bonds? And I'm going to tell you, if that trifecta happens, you might as well, what's that airline thing? Bend over, grab your knees, get ready to kiss your behind goodbye. Because if Trump, the longer his policies go on, the worse it's going to be. We've already suffered hugely through the Doge cuts. I mean, who in their right mind would give an untrained political person like Elon Musk chainsaws to go after the federal budget? Why would you do that? And there's obviously no concern for the welfare of others. Otherwise, you wouldn't do that. But that's a really key thing. The welfare of others matters not one whit to Donald Trump. Not one whit. So therefore, we know what he wants. And the truth of the matter is, it's up to us to deny him. About that judge not thing. That's always misquoted. I think what it means is don't judge people unfairly or harshly or on flimsy evidence, because we discriminate every day. We discriminate with who we talk to, who we sit next to. It goes on and on. But I do think, just as much of a symbol as anything else, we really do need to just step up a little more and let the world know that we will be there. It'll probably take another president to do that. Uh, but truth and honest, I think America will do what it takes to try and recover as much as it can. But sometimes the damage is just so bad and so quick. I guess it's like pancreatic cancer or something. It's so bad and spread so quickly that the person never has a chance. But anyway, so guys, what do you think? Friedman's article was, how much crow would Trump have to eat to get a reasonable deal? And I think it's going to prove to be too much for him. He's not going to want to, Trump isn't going to eat this much poopy doo. I mean, nobody enjoys it, but he's just a criminal with it. I'm using that kind of stuff to sell records to get money. It's a little cheesy in my book, but what do I know? Okay. Oh, hang on, let's get a sip of water here. We're getting a little dry. I needed that. Thanks, guys. So, and let's, if we have a few minutes here, let's go into this whole Cornyn Paxton thing. Anybody that's had any tangential involvement in politics knows Ken Paxton has more lawsuits and is in at least as much ethical trouble as Trump is. He may be even in as much legal jeopardy, but I don't usually do that kind of law, so go figure. So think about this. You had good old faithful Cornyn, who would always vote for Trump 99% of the time. And a lot of times he would do it, grudgingly, but he would do it. And then you had, what's his name? Oh God, who is that? I'm sorry, well, fractured today. But when Trump gets involved with these Cornyn Paxton decisions, it's not just the Cornyn Paxton candidates. This affects the party up and down the voting line, up and down the ballot. And when people start questioning you about things they shouldn't question you about, you would have to think there's some coercion being exercised. And everybody's told us to watch out for this at the polls. For those of us that don't cast your ballot by mail, I actually think that's the best thing around, is do it by mail. And if I'm not mistaken, in California, you can check a box and they will email you where your return is at each step of the process, like got accepted, got counted, so on and so forth. And people can criticize California all they want, but California is about innovation. And and if you wondered why, I will tell you, it's because people in different parts of the country act differently, and I think largely because of the weather. I think that's why people stay inside for months at a time in the Northeast, and why people kind of like to wear shorts on December in California. I know I was kind of like wearing shorts in December in California. But yeah, so Paxton's been accused of God knows what. I mean, stock trading, ethics problems. Matter of fact, I think he only got saved in his last ethics impeachment because he took over the wife's interest in the house or something crazy. But anyway, Cornyn and Paxton. The only hope I have is that Tallarico at least comes in second. I mean, he's got to at least do that. We cannot keep going through these. Ted Cruz and who's the other one? Who's the other senator from Texas? Cornyn. Yeah, I mean these guys are just insane. And what's his name? Every Trump person, you can rest assured, is not there because of knowledge or talent or experience or anything like that. They're there. They have that position as long as they are faithful to Donald Trump, which is what happened to Cornyn. Cornyn, I think, voted with Trump 99% of the time, but wanted 100%. So Trump's like, get the bum out of here. And the rest of the senators are going, but sir, you're being completely unfair. And we know how long the wheels stay on the bus after comments like that are made. So anyway, give us a call, 949-629-3820. And if you're up to it, hit the live stream button on the homepage. And if you're really up to it, hit that old PayPal donate button. And I don't want you to hit it. I don't want you to smash it. Certainly don't just sit there and stare at it. What I really want you to do is just smash the living daylights out of it and make some donations and let's help Uncle Al pay his rent and keep the show on the air. I think that'd be a good thing. What do you guys think? Are you up to it, or am I like my own biggest fan again? Again, that's not cool either. But anyway, so the Cornyn thing. So guys, what are we really going to do long term? What are we going to do? Trump's not going to do anything. And not only that, but the things you do will be bad for you. I mean, like trying to break into the Riverside Sheriff's Office or County Clerk's Office to get the voting rolls. I mean, if anybody does that, shouldn't they just be? I almost think that should be a capital offense. I think if that's not a high crime or misdemeanor or treason, I don't know what is. These guys keep wanting to. My favorite is the way they keep blaming the Biden crime family. I'm like, you're kidding me. You guys make more in an afternoon than he made in years. But anyway, you see my point there. So the point with Cornyn was that 100% loyalty isn't enough. And that does not leave a good taste in the Republican sitting senators' mouths, because incumbency won't protect you. And if your boss, the president, won't protect you, then you is unprotected. And, the old foofy dude's getting ready to really hit the fan there. And, listen, just give us a call, let us know. I can't believe people take this willingly. And I always ask people, like, what was it about January 6th that was not enough for you to want to impeach him? What got him off the hook? Can you tell me? Please, can you tell me? And, sometimes I'm afraid that someone's going to call me a troublemaker and smash my car windshield with a sledgehammer. But, you just, sometimes there's a price to be paid. And the bigger the forum, the bigger the problem. And this is clearly a major league deal. And we've got a president that's like too ignorant to deal with it. So sometimes, guys, my best advice is to go home after work, put your feet up, have maybe 2 adult beverages, and just relax from there, because there's no way any one person is realistically going to change this. I mean, let's say Trump does get assassinated and JD doesn't. Guess what? JD steps up and everybody knows. Or what if George Bush's mother, what if anybody's mother does this? So, guys, I'm going to kind of leave that alone for just a second. And I want to go into like credibility, like I suggested at the top of the program. And I'm curious, how many of you and how many people have done a generic internet search for the most credible news sources? And that's clearly not a misleading question. What are? And and the answer to that is it's kind of a complex one. But what we're dealing with still is is an unstable president that is just impossible. And the more everybody tries to make it possible, the weirder he gets. So I said the best thing that can happen is for someone to hit the 26th Amendment button and let Vance or Trump Jr., whoever it is running for the next full term, let them lose in a huge landslide. Just a huge landslide. But anyway, as I talked about credibility in organization and news organizations, I think you see something like the New York Times and the BBC, and I say if you were to ask the simple question, what are the most honest newscasters? You'll get an answer. And, I hope people take it seriously. I don't, I had a problem with that a while back. I love to barbecue on like a little hibachi grill, but after a while you get to feel bad about the pollution caused by your little bit of charcoal. And it's not my little bit of charcoal, it's my little bit of charcoal on top of everybody else's little bit of charcoal. And you don't, and we live, things are too congested in California to be inconsiderate like that. That's one of those things where we really are all in it together. And guys, it's starting to get a little cool out here, and I don't have a jacket, so we're gonna have to debate the issue a little bit. But back to credibility. And like I said, let's look at a recent statement that came out of Iran and Trump's rebuttal to it. There was a leak about Iran's negotiating wants and how close we are to getting there. And that's followed up with that's a complete lie from Trump. So on one hand, you get the Iranian people here, and on the other side, you get President Trump. And you're wondering who's telling the truth about this particular issue. And who do you think is? Let's look at the backgrounds. I don't really know if Iranians, have taken lying to the level that Trump has, because I mean they're quite the ways to ask the questions to get around it. Uh, but anyway, if you stick with a credible news organization like the New York Times or the Financial Times, I think was also mentioned. Uh, if you can't look at these things in the abstract, you have to look at them, who they're reporting on, and what is being said. And I always thought the New York Times was actually pretty much down the middle. They might throw a bone to a Democrat every now and then, but they're not an unofficial arm of the Democratic Party. That's kind of what I would like to be, an unofficial arm of the Democratic Party. Uh, so credibility. Is somebody worthy of being believed? And like in this deal, we get the Iranians clergy on one side and Trump on the other. You'd like to think our guy is worthy of being believed, but people don't see it that way. And I think we've all seen enough and heard enough about him to not be surprised. Uh, but I mean, it's just so vitally important. And listen, there's absolutely nothing wrong, particularly when dealing with the politicians in elections, to ask Siri or Gemini or Claude or whatever AI you use, what is Trump's reputation for telling the truth? That's a pretty objective question. And I think anybody that asks that question will realize that they shouldn't be surprised that the answer is so bad either. Guys, hang on a second. I'm going to put my little something on top here. It's getting cool. And we got to take the old headphones off for this. everybody has this perception of California as being fun and sun and all that, but it's rarely that warm here, at least on the coast. Oh, there we go. That's a little better. Maybe we'll tell you what, the sun came from behind the clouds, so maybe we won't have to put something light on top. It's just a spectacular day here in Newport. Wednesday, May 26th, 27th. How about that? The 27th of May. And so we are dealing with credibility. And how do you assess it? And I hope you guys do this, almost every day with almost everybody, but in a nice way. I hope that whenever somebody says something, you're like, huh, what if that can be? What if that's true? As opposed to what Trump did was he just said everybody lied and that he was the source of truth. I mean, can you imagine the nerve of that? Um, he's clearly demented. I can only hope that the Cornyn Paxton um endorsement will bring things in Texas to a head. I mean, you can't keep, you guys, you're as bad as Alabama and all the rest of the South. You keep electing these borderline criminal people. Why? Because Trump's people show up in the primary, and that's where the general is determined. Uh, guys, I'm not gonna get started anymore. It's sun clouds supposed to be coming in. Hang on. How about that? A 2.21 earthquake has occurred. Where was this? I have my little earthquake app here. Here it is. Earthquake app, and it's a 2.21, which barely registers, but the damage adds up quickly. Anyway, so it's a 2.21. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna put my shirt on. All right, guys. All right, guys, we're back. Thanks for letting me do that. It gets a little chilly here, even in the summertime and in the daytime. People always, I say, thinks it's sun and fun, California, and all that. If you want to be like really warm, you have to go to Florida or Palm Springs, one of the two. If you're on the coast, it's not what you usually think, what you think usually about beaches. In California, it's really not uncommon to have what they call the marine layer, and which means it's just a gray day until the marine layer burns off. And today started out just like that, really gray morning, a little drizzle, and lo and behold, just about 11:30, 12, as I'm getting ready to come on, the sun shines again, and it can keep shining on my boat because I love doing this from outside. So, guys, Paxton and Cornyn. I mean, in what's really important here is to remember the way things had worked out in the past. The nutcase wins the general. Excuse me. The nutcase wins the primary. The nutcase goes on to compete against the Democrat, and guess what? The Democrat cleans their clocks. Why? Because they're MAGA Republicans. They're not normal people. And And MAGA people are, for whatever reason, highly likely to commit a crime on behalf of the president. And then when you think about that $1.8 billion fund, but and don't forget, I heard Trump say he's going to give it to charity. Uh, does anybody even want to make it a stab at that one? I think we both know that what he says ain't true. As a matter of fact, if he got the $1.8 billion, I'd be really shocked if any of it got paid out to anyone other than himself. 1.8 billion. I don't know about numbers that big, but I would imagine you could put together a nice little army for that. Maybe even half of that. I mean, I can't imagine how many tanks and rockets and guns and all that stuff you can buy for a cool, I don't know if he scales it back down to $1 billion just to keep a little in pocket change. But like I said, Trump's just dangerous. And we were all told about it. Everybody told us about it. Kamala's big deal was, I will come in on day one with a to-do list. Trump will come in day one with a retribution list. And you guys heard it. You had the choice to make. I love hearing how people keep running, oh, Trump this, Trump that. Well, you voted for him, you idiot. He spelled out all these economic policies, which every reputable economist in the world said will lead to a really bad situation with a range-bound stock market and high unemployment. And you would have to think that the unemployment figures are starting to add up. Meta laid off 8,000 people the other day. I mean, it's not like somebody lays off 5 or 10 people. These are thousands of people. Then somebody else laid off. I see Meta laid off 8,000 in their AI section. I don't know if they laid off anybody else. But anyway, and that kind of leads me to transition into AI. And and the famous quote is from 2001: A Space Odyssey, when he tells Hal the computer to open the door, and Hal says, "I cannot do that." We are closing in on that. This is clearly AI 1.0, but it is awesome. And it has an awesome amount of power. Whether it's good or bad is, of course, depends on the user. But I think the potential for abuse of this thing is just so high. I have no idea how I'm sure the Google, Anthropic, guys, I'm sure they want everybody on some sort of subscription basis for this. And if you have any need at all, you can't. It's not like you can go someplace else. There are a few different AI sources and apps, but as a general proposition, I think most people use Google, Gemini, and Anthropic's Claude. Whenever I have any given political concern, I'll address it to AI and see what they say. And it's crucial not to believe every word is the gospel. It's absolutely vital to think of it as, rough notes thrown together that you might be able to use at some point. Don't get too wrapped up in copying AI word for word and making sure you are meticulously asking the right question. Because AI doesn't really care. It has no feelings, even though the way it engages you as like a human. But they're not, and you gotta keep that consistent. And guys, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I've got to go to the car for a second and get some decongestants. So what I think I'm going to step away for just a second and go do this. I'll be right up. Guys, thanks for indulging me and letting me go grab these pills I need. Breeze definitely getting a little stronger here. And by the way, it's got to be under 70, just so you guys will know it's not exactly paradise. Even though some people that just might be paradise, a nice mid 60s kind of lifestyle. And I don't mean the year 60s, I mean the temperature. So yeah, credibility. Yeah, yeah, and let's say this news. Let's give you. I don't even know if this will work anymore. Do any of you guys remember the Rio National Enquirer when it had headlines like "Locked in refrigerator eats left foot"? You remember those things? Now, clearly, those are designed to be entertaining and not the gospel truth, right? But it's still really funny when you see people, protesting against the Inquirer because they don't tell the truth. Well, they're not intended to, as opposed to the venerable New York Times. And guys, if you can at all do this, unless I'm usually not the person to suggest people spend money, but even if it's just on Sunday, try to get the New York Times and spend Sunday or whatever you can. If you go out, that's fine, but spend the next few days reading it, because they are credible. They have proven themselves to be credible. They have been judged as being credible. They are a credible newspaper, and don't forget, credible means worthy of being believed. And I'm gonna go through my favorite example of worthy of being believed because I just can't help myself, and this really makes the point. Remember when Trump and Stormy were having that little tiff about what happened in the hotel room in Tahoe? I think it was not long after Barron was born, and the underlying premise was that Trump and Stormy had a little an intimate affair, shall we say? And so anyway, they're in court, and they call Stormy Daniels to the stand, and you guys say Stormy, bless her heart. She always tries really hard, and I always thought she was a relatively honest woman. So anyway, with that in mind, you got her on one side and giving a position, and her position is laid out by the attorney's questions. And I'll just kind of summarize, but let's see. The attorney says something like, well, Ms. Daniels, do you recall the defendant being in your hotel room? Yes, I do. Was he dressed or undressed? Both. Well, let me ask you this. What color underwear did he have on? Red. Okay, so he's there taking his clothes off, and he's red underwear. Did the underwear ever come off? Yes, they did. When was that? Well, that was when we were getting ready to have sexual intercourse. And he says, okay, so the red shorts are off, and you guys are getting ready to have sexual intercourse. By any chance, did the defendant's penis have any unusual characteristics or distinguishing features or anything like that? And Stormy says something like, it did look kind of wildly to the left and almost looked like a trout, like a trouser trout. So, okay, we got that down. Penis hooks to the left, looks like trouser trout. Okay, and Wilma Daniels, following along this line of questioning, do you believe, or what did you think of the defendant's sexual performance? And Stormy goes, oh, yeah, she hems and haws, just, what a big deal. So anyway, that's Stormy's story. They met at this golf tournament, and he came in the bedroom, and they had sex and left. Okay, that's essentially Stormy's testimony, right? And now, so how does Donald Trump counter that testimony? What does he do to make people think that she's lying about this? That Stormy just made this up. And, you can as Trump gets on the stand, he's got these 3 points to rebut. That he was in the hotel room, that his penis was not tucked to the left, and he was great in bed. So that's what he's got to say. So all he's got to say is something like, I don't know what planet you were on, but I never wear red underwear. And my penis hooks to the left. You must have got me confused with somebody else you went to bed with. And just keep bearing her credibility like that. But Donald Trump is such an incredible person. He has the hardest time painting the other person as bad or evil, unless you're an idiot. And he did that to get your vote. So there's so what does Trump do? Trump gets on the witness stand, and the attorney asks him something about Stormy Daniels, and his response is one for the books. His response is, I'm sorry, it just cracks me up. I never saw that woman before in my life. So at this point, you have two sides to pick from. You have the side that says Trump was in my room with red underwear, a penis sharply hooked to the left, and it wasn't good in bed. And on the other hand, you got somebody saying, never saw that woman before in my life. So which one would you believe and why? And that's the essence of credibility. I think I would believe Stormy because I believe she's a relatively truthful person. And I would not honor Donald Trump's words because I believe his words to be not worthy of being believed. And the whole thing about a man's word is his bond. People used to intend to actually follow through, and they wanted their word to be their bond. They wanted the person and the community at large to know that when you say something, it's credible, it's worthy of being believed. Now, let me ask you this: Trump having the UFC, is that the thing that's like cockroach fighting? I don't think there's like any protection. I think these people are just free to kind of go into a cage and kill each other. And as if that wasn't enough fun, he wants to do this live and in color from the White House grounds. Guys, do you see we're being led by a lunatic, or do you still believe that everything's hunky dory? Give us a call 949-629-3820, and like I said, if does it take a second mortgage to take the kids out to McDonald's these days? How about a tank of gas? I mean, do you buy a couple of gallons at a time? I want to say 2/3 of a tank of gas for like $95 or something. It's really I know that, remember the game Jenga? Well, I always thought that was kind of like the U.S. between the healthcare and the economy and everything else. I thought that everything was just kind of hanging together by a thread, and that if you rearrange any given thing, you're likely to make the pile come down, which is Jenga, right? And when Trump started messing up the tariffs and all this, I sort of think you cannot micromanage an economy on that level and have it do well. So, but don't forget, Trump knew more about the would it be the forward sushi market, the future sushi market? I don't know what it is, but you'd have to be really caught up to not get left behind. And as far as getting caught up and not left behind, we had always been leaders. We had the best research. We had the best of everything. And the reason we had it is because we had a government who didn't mind funding it, who saw funding sciences as a national obligation. If you don't fund science, you're stuck with the flat Earth people, and they just might be taking a stronger position in MAGA. Well, my brother tries to get me to understand that what really goes on in the mind of a Trump voter is that they are so wired to not believe anything inconsistent with their preformed ideal of Trump. And that if you do that, they just flip out. They don't know how to answer, right? And that's why you always, whenever a Democrat will make a thoughtful policy suggestion, the Republican reply on Instagram, you're like, stuff it up your ass, pal. I mean, some of these responses are a little cruel, um, but they just don't seem to get it. And so whether that's a genetic defect, well, let's say whether it's a bug or a problem, no, well, it's the feature of, is the bug a feature or it's the feature of the bug? So anyway, just a little tech talk for you there. So yeah, what do you do? What do you? I don't know what else you do besides have a split screen showing Trump in one frame and he lied on another. I mean, the guy's just been the worst thing for American society. He alone has added $3.8 trillion to the deficit, and guess what? He adds 3.8 trillion, and you lose healthcare and food and maybe shelter. What a deal! Who would not vote for that? I'm sure. You see, the problem is Trump only understands people that like him. Wealthy people from New York. Sometimes Floridians get kind of bitchy, but as a general proposition, he's been pretty pliable. So we can only hope that his next haircut really sucks as badly as mine. So anyway, let's get back to the deal here. And how about if we take credibility? Even how about let's take it to another step? How about Karen Bass and the run for the mayor in LA? Do we believe everything she put out concerning the fire? And even though I don't know whether she put out every communications from the fire department, uh, I can conclude there's at least some intent to minimize the harm as opposed to just get out of the way and let it burn. So I think we really need to evaluate Karen Bass. Listen, I don't necessarily believe every word she said, but I would be willing to eat that much crow to have a Democratic mayor thinking that in the long run we have a better chance of solving our problems than not. We just need a little extra time. Oh, and another thing, I don't want to hear about vigilantes or gangs coming in cities and shooting people. Just so happened that it was the ICE gang that did it originally. But, there's been a few assassination attempts on Trump in the last few weeks. And my position has always been that if he didn't do stuff to actively piss people off, he wouldn't have death threats, a couple of times a month. People might be a little more accepting, but you just can't put lipstick on a pig, or you can, but it's just gonna look like pig with lipstick and gonna look like anything, anything you'd want to hang with. So anyway, as we think about the primary that's coming up on June the 2nd here in California, the ballots here are always just really big, just because it's such a, we have 40 million people. But I always kind of like the ride up to the Redwoods and see what's going on up there, and hopefully we'll be able to get away for a few days. We'll see what happens. I'm sure we can find a place to do a live remote in Humboldt County somewhere. Nobody's been there. They really should. I'm still trying desperately to go to Sequoia and Kings Canyon, which is a little closer. But it's just California in a way has so much. It's not, Zion isn't that much farther away, and I kind of like Zion. Matter of fact, I think Utah is very cool. But Utah's is a it's a fairly unique place with its Mormon population and Mormon roots. But I'm gonna pick on Utah for a minute, and I think that there's little towns like near Zion and Bryce, and it's like Panguitch or God knows whatever else. And just out of curiosity, I said, I wonder what houses go for out here. They obviously don't have a thriving metropolis, but how do they generate enough money to do this? So I looked at them, and they're, a starter home there is as expensive as anything else almost. It really is if you don't have $500,000, it kind of doesn't pay you to really think about it. And that's kind of a boatload of money for most people, $1.5 million. I mean, that's usually the result of years of work, accumulation, and not necessarily getting lucky and inheriting something. I don't know about you guys, but when my mother died, I inherited the traditional nothing, uh, because it was kind of what was left. Uh, so, guys, let's like keep this credibility in mind every time you have a conversation, and every time you look at two people talking. I guess I'm more likely to be on TV. Who is more than likely telling the truth? And you should get most of this. Some of you obviously won't get. It's called being human. Uh, but I can't imagine how how the how the MAGA people keep functioning in a world where they're not clearly not universally loved. And on the subject of universal, I did hear Buffy St. Marie do, I think, the most famous protest song of all time. The Unknown Soldier, or Unknown War, or something like that. Uh, you know, we've lost a lot of lives fighting people, and we've just got outright killed a lot of people. And when I think about the Native Americans and our expansion to the West and our manifest destiny. I mean, can you imagine believing that God had ordained us to go conquer the American West and kill all those Native Americans that were just inhabiting the place without any deeds or titles or anything? Uh, now you see, that to me seems a little much. Oh, but anyway, my point back to the housing is a place in Panguitch or Torrey Pines or Hurricane, Utah, any of those places will be $400,000. And it's not like they got an industry to support that or jobs to support that. Uh, we're talking literally, Torrey, Utah, Hurricane, Utah, Panguitch, all these towns that are just, just, I can't imagine how small they are. But Utah and Colorado, particularly New Mexico and Utah, they have so much open space that you could probably find a little bit to yourself. Of course, you would be in like rural New Mexico, rural Utah, and I'm a big fan of the Utah countryside. I'm not a big fan of Utah the state. Um, One of the big reasons I like Utah, despite their $400,000 starter homes, is that they have 5 national parks. I've been to 4 of them, a couple of them twice, but I've never been to Canyonlands. I've been to Zion a couple of times, Bryce a couple of times, Arches a couple of times. Arches, and what's the other one besides Canyonlands? But anyway, and there's also a dark sky park, I think in Blanding, Utah, Blanding, New Mexico. One of those places is like the darkest place in America to stargaze. And during one of my cross country drives, it's nighttime, and I'll never forget this. It's like, maybe a quarter moon at the most, maybe just a slight crescent. But as I went to the dark sky park and parked my car, and I got out of the car to walk around a little bit, and it was like a flashlight was on. It was so bright. It was so dark there, and the moon was so bright. I mean, you got bathed in sunlight. It was the damnedest thing. But anyway, what was the other one? Utah, Canyonlands, Arches, Zion, Bryce, Capitol Reef. And Capitol Reef is the coolest place, just geologically. I think that's where a lot of the astronauts go to train for really just rugged, desolate country. And yeah, I can't believe I almost forgot Canyon Reef. And it's I won't tell you why, but I'm sure you think it's interesting that a park in the middle of Utah refers to a reef like you would find in the in a sea or water or something. Uh, mm, but yeah, can you imagine $400,000 for a home in Utah? And no, I said that's not Salt Lake City or Ogden or Provo, any of those things. And but yeah, when you get to those really big, not super populated western states, what you generally find is one or two major or semi-major towns or cities, and lots of just little hamlets and villages kind of thrown in. Um, but the area around Capitol Reef is always considered a great drive through Utah. Um, Colorado is also a really super place. And the key to it is you have to have a car and you have to have time. A little bit of money is okay, or it might take a lot now. I was thinking that at one point during COVID, I drove across country to see my brother, and I want to say somewhere in Utah, I paid and filled up. It was like $1.39 a gallon, and the reason there was it was so cheap was that nobody was going anywhere. Everyone was indoors. There was just no demand, and when there's no demand, the price usually drops. So to make a long story longer, today it might take me 4 times that much to do the same trip. The trip that would cost $200 is now 800. Or as I was telling my brother, if you get a car repair for less than 1,000, for less than $500, let me know. It seems like 500 is the new 100. And like I said, the new cars, even the cheap ones, have all these sensors and all that. That replacing and working on things gets pretty complicated fairly quickly. I've got an '06 Jaguar S-Type, and I think that about has the right amount of technology in it for me. We've got like 150 something thousand miles on it, and I'm going to try to let that be my last car. I really don't want anything with any more technology, or at least not much more. A cool Bentley might make me compromise, but yeah, I just don't need I don't need a computer on wheels. How that helps. Now, while we're talking about the computer on wheels, Biden did a superb job of planning for the future. His Green New Deal was transformational, and it's transformational until you get a guy who gets his feelings hurt, and then he calls the genius becomes a schmuck. Yeah, I mean, Trump is he's got to go, guys. There's no compelling reason for him to be here anymore. He's pretty much used up his last invite. He's pretty much used the last square of toilet paper, if you know what I mean. So let's dedicate ourselves to the biggest possible Donald Trump send off when whoever it is loses in a landslide in 2028. And you guys can keep, and because Biden got it, you would have to assume that other smart people like Gavin Newsom can at least go that far, if not farther. And we've gone too far. The consequences are far too serious anymore. I say, well, I doubt we'll ever get to go. If we go backwards, I don't know what to say. That would be just devastating. And the reason it's devastating because, people may think, well, geez, I can't wait for the $400,000 house to become $200,000 so I can buy it. So while that might be really good for you, on the other hand, how many banks are made loans for $400,000 and now it's only worth $2? Are people going to keep paying their note? Probably not. They may try to redo it at maybe double the price of the subscription. But regardless, Biden took efforts to get us into the 21st century, in an environmentally sensitive way. And I don't think Trump knows like the meaning of the word sensitive. We know he doesn't know. We know he doesn't have enough sense to ask, well, what about Plan B? And what happens is you just find people deferring to this mental midget, and they kind of have to because he is the boss. But that's an extremely unfair position for a worker to be in. That's just one of the worker protections that someone like Ada Briseno knows about and has dealt with. I mean, if you want a square deal, call Ada. If you want somebody to lie and cheat for you, go find somebody else. It's not going to be her, not going to be me. Uh, so, guys, what's up for this Wednesday evening? You're going to give us a call, 949-629-3820, and let us know what's on your mind? Or is everybody just going to kind of space out and enjoy the relatively nice day? Yeah, it's, in California, you have to remember that things are different everywhere else. And I'll be the first one to tell you, Governor Newsom is not perfect, but I will also be the first one to tell you Newsom 2028. And I do that for a few reasons. One of the big reasons I believe in Gavin Newsom, is I think he's a bright guy. He's relatively well in touch, who wants to do good things for people. I don't think he's a terribly complicated guy. And helping others to me seems the reason for public service, and that's kind of why they call it public services. You serve the public, and so yeah, public service is just different. And in the South it becomes extremely personal. In the West, it's so populated now that somebody's got to wait. If not multiple people have to wait. And like I say, in these days and times, you can't just, and Donald, I'm talking to you here, you can't just blow shit up and then walk away. If somebody, it would be understandable, especially from you with no morals. When Biden said you had the morals of an alley cat, he was on. The problem was I don't think people really understood what his warning was. But Biden sized Trump up pretty well, pretty early, pretty often. And he's the first guy to crack under any kind of pressure. And I can't imagine the pressure he must be feeling about now. So he's got to, he's got to think about this shoe dropping. What if he was impeached and convicted? Now, flipping the script for a second, I don't know how long it's going to be after Democrats get in power in 2026. But that old Trump impeachment seems like a good, like a song I want to hear again. He got off the first few times because you had absolute weasels like Mitch McConnell, the guy who stole a Supreme Court seat from Barack Obama. And make no doubt about it, he stole it. Trump submits the name of Merrick Garland for nominee of the Department of Justice. And what does Mitch McConnell do? Does he schedule a hearing right away? No. They're like, well, it's too late in the term, and we think it belongs to Trump, and we're just not going to do it. And you're like, what? And so apparently McConnell's position was, you need the advice and consent of the Senate, but we're going to take our time about it, and we're going to even take our time to the degree that it's moot. Is that not just nauseating from an American senator? The only thing that makes that halfway believable is the fact that he's from Kentucky. And I know there's smart people everywhere, and oh, by the way, the capital of Kentucky is not Louisville, it's Frankfort. Just thought I'd mention that. So you can't when a weasel like Trump gets a toehold or foothold, you gotta expect the rest of the body to just come crashing down. And I really think that's where we are now. I really think that things have progressed to a point that if we may be in the early stages of a crash already. If anything goes wrong in Iran with the negotiations, things are going to get worse there for us in a hurry. And you can't really bet against Trump's team delivering peace. Oh, even though I talked earlier about Trump and trying to throw the Abraham Accords in as part of the deal to get the UAE and our other Gulf allies to normalize relations with Israel. And people are, well, how does that relate to what we're going through? And of course, it's just something he wants. I tell uh, my mother would have treated him like you would not believe. You want what? Well, suck it up, Buttercup. Cry me a river, pal. Oh, I can hear her now. Oh, except I forgot my mother's favorite thing: bite me. Uh, anyway, just some mommy stories that kind of jumped to mind. God, the breeze is really picking up and getting cooler out here. It's like fighting the sun, and I was able to have a little umbrella open to do this in a little shade so I'd be able to actually see my laptop. But I didn't want to get that cold. And the truth of the matter is, I do this for you. I sit here in the cold and just suffer, suffer, suffer with a post nasal drip and a pre nasal whatever it is, and God only knows. All I can tell you is I try to leak as little as possible. And so let's get back to these leaks for a second. You had pretty boy Pete Hegseth and Trump saying something about Iran, and then you got like the Secretary of the Navy going saying they're wrong. Now I can't wait to see how much longer this guy stays in the job, because Vance is known to fire people for that he needs. He'll fire people he needs, and I think that's called cutting off your nose to spite your face. But you might want to double check me on those kind of old time folk things, because I could just as easily have gotten it wrong. And let's see, this is the 27th. We've got what, less than a week or about a week until primary out here. And and how about, what do you guys think is going to happen in Georgia? This could be really interesting. I think Ossoff and Warnock are much harder to beat than people think. Ossoff, as I understand it, was some sort of a public service investigative reporter kind of guy. And, he's supposed to be highly thought of, does very good work. And how about Letitia, whatever her name is, that is running for governor? How about that? A Democratic governor. Wouldn't we love that in Colorado? Mm. And but in the larger picture of things, it's really hard to keep the union together. I mean, countries have different economic interests, and there's not so much money to go around, especially with interest rates going up that take away more of our money to pay the national debt. I mean, whatever Trump has done has a real downside to it, and nobody. And when they push Trump about it, he's like, "No, they're wrong." I'll never forget when he said something about he knew more about tariffs than the professors at Wharton. And I'm like, "You're insane. You're just absolutely positively insane." Uh, but anyway, that's. Let me talk about some local people for a second. Some local politicians I want to give a shout out to are Kara Stewart and Dr. Kelly Brown. They're running for city council in Costa Mesa from districts 3 and 5. And I'm going to tell you, these women are real valuable candidates. Kelly's background and educational situation are just unparalleled. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that she cannot do whatever, that she cannot function at an absolutely high level. In other words, I think she only functions at a very high level. So I think she's just a super candidate. And Karen comes at things from a little different direction, but she cares every bit as much as anybody in the world about her constituents. And I say she cares, she's passionate, she's motivated, she's honest, she's got integrity. And, I think this all holds true for Kelly. And for all those reasons, these two deserve your vote. You won't find a candidate any better, and you won't find a candidate who is more concerned about helping uh, than women like Ada Rosenio. And, you guys know what I think of Ada. Well, guys, it's getting to be like 1:40ish or so, 1:45. We'll go for a few more minutes and call it a day, just because getting a little post nasal drip, and I don't want to be nauseous on the air. Even I may be nauseating, but I don't want to be nauseous. So, guys, what do you think? How much should Trump have to eat to get out of Iran? And more importantly, what's his lie going to be about it? That's what I can't wait to see. As the lie, or hear the lies. And I shouldn't do this. This is so wrong. But you know how wrong it is to go to like the Daytona 500 or what's the or Talladega, or even the Coca-Cola World 600. Those are different animals that take different sorts of training. And with politics, the training comes really early on, usually from a political family. But we can't. We've got to teach. To say we lead by example, we can't really do that. And what we've done and what we are leaving for our kids and grandkids is just unconscionable. And we're leaving them, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, $40 trillion in debt. And we did this in the last few years. I mean, I understand deficit spending. I understand the necessity of sometimes spending what you don't have. I understand the bond market. And I just don't think many people in the administration do. The bond market is so crucial, and these guys treat it like an afterthought. I mean, if the prime resets a half a point, and there are all these private banking sectors like Ford Credit, GM Credit, Guitar Center Credit, Nordstrom Credit, the list goes on and on. So anyway, always think about credibility when you have two sides in front of you, and when you watch the news tonight, think about it. Are they slanting it? Are they giving you their position, or are they giving you a complete neutral position? If there's ever time to limit our intake to positive things, this is it. Trump's clearly a loser who's losing at everything. I'm going to start off with asking, can anyone point out an ally we used to have? Yeah, I didn't think so. The fact of the matter is, the world is a dumpster fire, and every time you find a dumpster fire, you'll see Trump, you'll notice Trump's hands on it. I mean, the guy's just a weasel. He does not belong anywhere. If he belongs anywhere in D.C., it's in the jail. I forgot what they call it. And and DC has a few different jails, I'm sure. But anyway, all right, guys, it's like 1:45ish, and my voice is starting to go. I'm almost out of things to say, so I think I'm going to wrap up today's broadcast with a thank you to everyone for tuning in. Let's see, keep those calls, letters, and emails coming. And like I said, it's like what the dog said when its tail got run over by the train. It won't be long now. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for me to say Roger Wilco.